Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Moran from Grand Opportunity USA, or GOUSA, the host and moderator for today's OppScore Debate with or without the candidates, with the race for the 7th Congressional District in Colorado. With us is Republican nominee Erik Aadland, who's running against Democrat Brittany Pettersen, who has not accepted our debate request for today. Erik will instead debate Pettersen's record, platform, and positions as found in the public record, on her website, and in the media. Information that is also found in his OppScore rating produced by GOUSA. Suzanne Monk is here to join us to read out Pettersen's record, as she has refused to join the debate to discuss and defend her record and positions for the voters of Colorado. GOUSA is a nonpartisan 501c4 nonprofit organization, and the OppScore, short for Opportunity Score, is the first, one and only unbiased political credit rating system that simply shows which politicians are working in support of the Constitution and the will of the people, and who's working against them. The app is free to use and was developed to give voters an easy, fast, and better way to assess candidates for office before they cast their vote, based on the issues they care most about. At GOUSA, we like to say that we are the voice of the forgotten 80%. As we like to say, it's not left versus right or red versus blue. Really, it's them versus you. So now for the debate rules. I will ask a series of 10 questions of the candidates. Republican candidate Erik will go first, and Suzanne will then speak for Democrat Pettersen's positions and record, each having up to 2 minutes to respond to each question. At the conclusion of the responses, I will briefly respond to identify whether the candidate is supporting or opposing the Constitution and the majority will of the voters on the given topic, and then move to the next question. So let's let the games begin. And I'm happy to introduce Erik to the audience.
Great to be with you, JP. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Sir, can you please tell the audience for a bit about your background and why you're running for Congress?
Certainly. So Erik Aadland, I grew up in a Army family, moved all over the world. I actually graduated from high school in Heidelberg, Germany, then went off to the United States Military Academy at West Point, served combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, was awarded 2 Bronze Stars, 1 for valor. And then after the Army, I spent a decade in the energy sector. I finished working in Israel, where I built a $300 billion pipeline as part of an offshore platform, made Israel energy independent. And then I left my company. I was pursuing a PhD in depth psychology. I really wanted a life of peace. My wife and 3 beautiful children retired to the mountains of Pine, Colorado, which is right in the heart of Colorado. And I was working on becoming a counselor to work with veterans and trauma victims, when I really had the space to recognize the peril this country is in, how Democrat progressive policies are taking us astray, undermining the U.S. Constitution, undermining opportunity, destroying our national security. The list is long, JP, of everything that's going wrong. So for me, this is a call of duty. I love Colorado. I love this country. And I want to serve in this time of crisis and help get this nation back on track.
Great. Thank you. And I think for the people watching this, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, we need someone like you that's going to want to represent the people for a change.
Thank you.
And so thank you. And we are and we reached out to Brittany Pettersen, and her office didn't respond. So we are going to read off her record since she's not here to speak for herself. And I'll do that right now. So this is Brittany's website, and I'm going to read directly. This is right from Ballotpedia. So that's what we're going to give her for her intro. Brittany Pettersen is a member of the Colorado State Senate, representing District 22. She assumed office on January 4th, 2019. Her current term ends on January 11th, 2023. Pettersen, a Democrat, is running for election for the U.S. House to represent Colorado's 7th Congressional District. She is on the ballot in the general election on November 8th, 2022, which is next week. She advanced from the Democratic Party on June 28th. Pettersen was initially a 2018 Democratic candidate in the race to represent the 7th District of Colorado, but she dropped out of the race when incumbent Ed Perlmutter announced that he was seeking re-election then. Pettersen is a former Democrat member of the Colorado House of Representatives, representing District 28 from 2013 to 2019. So she's been involved in politics for about 10 years now. Okay, so great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Brittany, for that great intro. Thank you, Erik, for yours. So we're going to start again we have 10 questions separated into the 5 points of opportunity I think I referenced earlier. The first one is on the the principle of personal opportunity, which is generally your constitutional liberties and freedoms. So question 1 is divided into two parts. I'm going to say them together. 1A, do you believe that everyone has the First Amendment right to religious liberty and free speech, including online speech? And 1B, do you believe that government has the right to use our private personal information for any reasons it deems necessary, including the right to mandate personal health and medical policy?
So the first question, freedom of speech and freedom to practice one's religion is fundamental to this country. So absolutely, I believe in it. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States as an Army officer. I honor that oath now, and all members of Congress take that same oath. And I am deeply concerned, JP, with what's going on with government colluding with big tech to censor narratives. That should never happen. That's a violation of our First Amendment rights. And as a member of Congress, I'm going to be sure to protect the entire Constitution and uphold it, but especially the First Amendment. And I'll take on big tech to make sure that there is an open dialogue. We've lost that in this country. We must restore it. And then number 2, medical freedom. No, the government does not have a right to use your information however it wants to. It needs to be protected and private. And it's deeply concerning to me how the government has intruded upon us and tried to force mandates, vaccine mandates, in a way that is blatantly unconstitutional. And if we cannot determine what is put in within our body or not, then we have no fundamental freedom. So we need to keep the government out of our medical history and have safeguards to protect that information. It's so vital.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your response, and we appreciate that. And I think you'll be happy to hear that you are on the side of the American voters. I'm going to occasionally show your score, your opportunity score, in short, OppScore, and your positions are not just something that someone on the right would appreciate, but we have the goods to show that on the First Amendment, you're on the side of the American people on that issue by your statements and your record, as well as we have the data showing that the vast majority of Americans support the strong First Amendment rights. And on the issue of personal privacy rights, likewise, you're on the side of the American people. The vast majority of American people want more privacy, less government intrusion. And a year or two ago, people were okay with harsh government mandates. But now the truth is coming out about these mandates, and more people are in support of the majority are in support of medical freedom. So you win both those points because you support the Constitution and you support the will of the people. So good job on those.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're going to move to Suzanne, who is going to now talk about Pettersen's record. What is Pettersen's position on this, since she's not brave enough to show up on this program and talk for herself?
Well, John, she sponsored a bill pushing what they call media literacy, which is a way for government intrusion to actually specifically control what kind of media is put into schools, what kind of media sites are allowed to get into our school system. It was touted as a huge violation against the First Amendment. So that's where we start with Pettersen's record. She also, as a state representative, she has been a staunch supporter of all of the COVID mandates, whether they're mask mandates or vaccine mandates, with Colorado actually having some of the strictest mandates nationwide.
Okay. So that being said, that's the reason why she is working against the voters of Colorado. And if you look at her positions, they are extreme. And she, while we didn't find enough information to say that she's, definitely against the First Amendment, even though there's a lot of gray area there, she did lose it. She did win a part of the point on that, but she definitely lost it on personal privacy rights. There's plenty of information, as you just described, talking about how she has no interest in, my body, my choice to many people on the pro-choice side of the aisle, but they seem to forget that completely when it comes to medical freedom. It's kind of interesting.
And she does refer to herself as the pro-choice mom. So
yeah, but no choice when it comes to injecting.
That is correct, but no choice when it comes to medical freedom.
And it makes no sense to most Americans. So that's why she loses that point on the score. Okay, thank you, Suzanne. All right, so next up, question 2, and this continues on a personal opportunity. What is your specific position on abortion rights? Strongly pro-life, strongly pro-choice, or do you believe that a mother has the right to choose early in the pregnancy but oppose abortion after the first trimester, except in limited and rare circumstances?
So as a father, I'm personally pro-life, JP, and this is something that is personal to me. But as a legislator, I recognize the need to strike the right kind of balance. And so I supported the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade because it was the correct legal decision. As per the U.S. Constitution, I believe this is a states' rights issue. So I'm running for Congress, and I don't want the federal government involved in this issue. So I'm not going to support any form of federal legislation around this issue as a representative. I'm going to respect Colorado's ability to choose through the legislative process. But I want to point out that Colorado has one of the most extreme permissive abortion laws in the country, if not the world. It allows abortion up to the day of birth, which I find reprehensible. And I think we need to strike a more moderate balance here in Colorado. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm running for Congress. I'm focused on the federal issues, and I want to keep the federal government out of it. I want to uphold the Hyde Amendment, which means I don't want federal taxpayer dollars funding abortion. And I think but we have the most permissive bill here in Colorado, and that needs to be addressed at the level of the state legislature. And Colorado has decided.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your answer on that. And I'm from Massachusetts. There was an old argument when JFK was president: you're going to follow the Pope, you're going to follow the president in the Constitution. And it's the same thing. You might have personal convictions, but that's different than saying you're going to serve your country according to the Constitution, which you'll do. So thank you. And let's see what Brittany has to say about this. I have an idea from looking at her record. Suzanne?
Well, John, Pettersen was the main, or what they call prime sponsor of a bill there in Colorado, excuse me, removing restrictions to any abortion access and increasing funding for abortions through Medicaid in the state of Colorado. She has actually encouraged abortion tourism, encouraging individuals to come to the state of Colorado to get abortions, co-sponsoring a sweeping pro-abortion bill in response to Roe v. Wade. So she's been allowed to support her abortion rights, has a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood, and calls herself, as we mentioned, the pro-choice mom.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And she's in line with, I believe, every member of Congress on the Democrat side is pro-choice, hardcore pro-choice, except for Henry Cuellar out of Texas. He's the only one, I believe. And again, if you look at her score, this is the thing. What do I find interesting? And is that the Democrats will talk about abortion as one of the main issues, but what we're about 25-30% of the people in America are pro-life on average. Only 8% support abortion through birth through 9 months, which is apparently the law right now in Colorado. So that's why she loses that point, because she's against the she's in the 8% fringe when it comes to that extreme.
Well, and most Americans oppose federal funding for abortion, but
that as well.
Pettersen does not. She supports it.
So again, it's them telling you and shoving down your throat what you don't want, and there's a difference between following the law and the people that or not or your extreme position. So thank you on that. Thank you, Suzanne. And now we're going to go to economic opportunity. 3A, 3B. Again, two parts to this question, Erik. Do you support a strong economy, free market capitalism with some checks and balances, and do you oppose expanded government control of our economy? That's part one. Part two is, do you oppose corruption and wasteful spending in government, which directly contributes to inflation?
The answer, yes, to both, and I'll expound on that, JP. I think we're the number one concern in my district, in District 7 of Colorado, is inflation and affordability. And so when Colorado is leading the nation in its inflation rate, approaching 16%, we are seeing that at both the federal level and at the state level, this is a direct result of government spending, and it's a hidden tax on hardworking families here in my district. So when government spends out of control, especially at the federal level, it creates a deficit if it's not operating within its cash flow, and that must be supplemented by printing money. That expands the money supply, devaluing every dollar. And right now, here in Colorado, hardworking families are working up to 2 months with no pay because of that hidden tax, that 16% inflation rate. So we need to rein in government spending. We need to make government more efficient while addressing quality services, making sure essential services like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid are well funded. But we need to improve government efficiency. We need to reduce waste and abuse in the bureaucracy and make sure that government is spending within its cash flow. We need to balance the budget, and we need to be very judicious with how we're spending American taxpayer dollars. Otherwise, inflation will continue to go out of control and continue to hurt hardworking families here in Colorado and nationwide.
Okay, thank you. And again, you are on the right side of the issue, not politically right. Well, politically right, but the right side when it comes to the American public. There's the economy. Rasmussen polls are out there. The top issues are economy, gas prices. This is crushing American families right now. And the left just keeps, the radicals just, the progressive just keep printing more money. And that's not a populist strategy. And right here, you're getting nearly 100% on economic opportunity, and on these issues of fraud and the economy. You're doing great. And for your viewers, they can go into your score and look at your positions and see the explanations and the proof where the American people stand on these issues. And you're
a wonderful tool. This is amazing.
So that's why we built it, to make it easy. It could take 30 or 40 hours of work. I know people have spent that much time to review their politicians before they vote. We can make this available in 3 minutes. You can go on here in just minutes, take 30 hours of work in 3 minutes, see where the candidate stands on the issues by the facts. So I'm glad you like it. Okay. I'm not sure Brittany would agree with you right now.
Probably not, because it exposes how radical she is and extreme.
Yes, well, it does. It shows it by the facts in a clean, non-biased way. Okay, great. Thank you for your answer on that. Now we're going to pull up Suzanne to talk about Brittany's position on this.
Well, John, her record does in fact speak for her when she is not present, and she has a consistent record of voting for big regulations, especially in the energy industry. It's a key indicator of her positions on the free market. She really appreciates voting for regulations in the state of Colorado, which has limited a lot of oil and gas production in the state of Colorado. We will discuss in the energy section. But she's also a big fan of government spending, voting for record-breaking budgets, a 12% increase of spending there in Colorado, a record-breaking rate of increase. She has voted for higher tuition. She has voted for higher taxes, including property taxes, and has voted to end tax credits for both businesses and regular citizens.
Wow. Okay. So that is not surprising. She is part of that progressive, very far left progressive caucus in the Democrat Party. And likewise, if you go to her score, you can get the goods on this. If you're not sure and you're a voter and you want to just get the real deal, you can go in here and you can see where she stands. There's links and evidence on everything we just talked about on these issues, on the economy, on jobs, on lower taxes. The spending that she's supporting is exploding. Inflation and taxes, on waste, government waste. There's a lot of information here on waste in government and her record. So we really encourage voters in Colorado, in the 7th District, to check this out before they vote. Okay.
He is very tax and spend, as Democrats often are.
Not going to help your wallet at all. It's going to make things much worse if we keep going this direction. We've got to put the brakes on it. American people say it, not because it's biased. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Suzanne. All right. Now we're moving to our next question. We're now to social opportunity, which is the third point of the 5-point star, social. And we're going to start with question number 4. Erik, do you oppose all forms of identity politics, including victim politics, separating people into opposing groups along racial, ethnic, and gender identity lines?
Yeah, absolutely. I oppose identity politics. I think it's un-American and it's antithetical to what this country was founded upon. One of the major problems, JP, in this country is the polarization, the hatred, the vitriol, the divide. And this was a country where we were meant to look beyond the color of our skin or any superficial differences. And as Martin Luther King Jr. said, we need to be focused on the content of one's character, not any other, not the color of our skin, not our racial our sexual orientations, not our religious preferences. This was about the fundamental aspects of the human being. And we, so I'm against racist ideologies that pit Americans against each other. We've got to find a way to heal the divisiveness, and certain ideologies do nothing but further foment divisiveness and divide Americans from each other. And so we need to be moving beyond so-called identity politics and finding that, the areas as human beings that unite us. There's more that unites us than divides us. And I firmly believe that, that's beneath the surface of our skin or any of the other superficial differences.
Okay, great. Thank you for your response on that. And we don't call ourselves the voice of the forgotten 80% for nothing, because we have the data on 30 plus issues, and you wouldn't believe that number 80% just keeps coming up, 70, 80, 90%. And people do not want this identity politics and division. We do not want it, but yet this is what the far left lives by. If you may have heard that, the old statement, which I think is a great one, is that there's nothing that a tyranny fears more than a united population.
Absolutely.
United, they have no power. And that's why they're obsessed with dividing us. So people have to understand there's chess pieces in this game. Stop playing the game. Just say no.
Yeah, and the left continues to run interference on things that aren't the concern of most people. They'll divide us on all these ancillary issues while they take our power away. And it's the oldest military strategy in the book, divide and conquer. And it's time to recognize that we're all Americans. We're all in this together, and we've got to come together and put aside those differences and discover where we can come together and find common ground.
I agree, and so does the polls. The top 10 issues, Rasmussen, Gallup, others, the top 10 issues are the things we're talking about today. All the stuff they're talking about and in the mainstream media is not in the top, anywhere near the top 10. They're just trying to be divisive. So thank you for being a uniter. Okay. So thank you, and you're with the American people on that. Let's see what Pettersen says. Since she won't show up, let's get the truth. Let's get the truth. What's her actual record positions on this?
Well, Ms. Pettersen has frequently jumped on board with the identity politics of the moment. For example, she voted to work for stricter police reform after George Floyd. She voted to end, quote, environmental racism when climate change was the big issue by cutting greenhouse gases. She voted for LGBTQ instruction protections in schools. She has voted for birth certificate transgender legislation and co-sponsored a bill to create a government position called Education Equity Officer, someone who would specifically look over equity in education. The person hired for that position is a CRT professor who advocates for CRT training in schools, as well as CR parenting.
Wow. Okay. So that is another very, very aggressive, progressive insanity. And, this isn't about me. This is about the race, but I'll interject for a moment. I'm a gay American. I ran as a Republican. I got more hate and more crazies coming after me for that reason. And the LGBTQ agenda is nothing to do with gay rights. It's all to do with really Democrat power and control and divisiveness. And Americans don't support it. They support equal rights for all, but they don't support this level of divisiveness. And you know what I mean? I can speak from my side as a gay American. She's not working. Stop using LGBTQ as a flag, because you don't stand for that at all when you stand up for this insanity, this divisiveness.
Well, and John, as a female voter, I believe that each representative does stand on his or her own record, not the record of their marital partner. But I must mention her husband is a very active supporter of BLM and of equity in schools and CRT and race theory, racial division education in our schools. He's a very prolific activist, so that is something to be aware of.
Okay, that's extreme, very, very extreme. Thank you, Suzanne. We came up with that idea of how about critical progressive theory? There's a lot of problems going on with that extremism. So let's move to the next question. I think people got a good flavor of that. She's working again against the American people. A very small fringe of people are on her side on that. That's why she loses that point, and you gain that point. The second part is healthcare. Healthcare is huge. People are very concerned about their healthcare and their rights. Do you support affordable and high-quality, market-driven healthcare for all, allowing citizens to choose either from a public government-run health system or keep their private insurance plan?
Yeah, the answer is yes, JP. And I'm concerned about skyrocketing healthcare costs. It's become very expensive here in Colorado. It's become unaffordable for many people, and the quality has also declined. And so we have to find that right balance between government provided service and the free market options. And a lot of what's driven healthcare costs through the roof is government intervention in regulating insurance companies, which was removed competition. The other thing is we don't have transparency of pricing, whether it's for pharmaceuticals. We need transparency of pricing throughout the entire system. And people need to have a choice, because one size doesn't fit all. I'm a father with 3 little children and a very healthy family. What I need in terms of healthcare is different from those who are seniors or who are just entering the marketplace coming out of college. So we need a diverse system that uses free market forces to drive prices down, and we need to drive quality while giving the option for those who are struggling to find services through a government program. But it needs to be made far more efficient to drive down those costs. And government has, through Obamacare and a lot of intervention with insurance companies, has had the exact opposite effect and made it unaffordable for many Americans.
Okay, well, thank you for your response to that, and you're right. I mean, there's plenty of evidence showing when with the when Reagan said something about I'm the government, I'm here to help. As a rule, let people figure it out. The government comes in when necessary, but yeah, running everything is always proven to be disaster, and that's another example of that. And when we look at your score on that, again, we encourage people to check out your score. You win both thumbs up on affordable healthcare, but also allowing people to choose from either a government plan or a private plan. And so good job on that. Most people either won't lose 1 point or lose the other point because the sides of the aisle are usually, are pretty polar. So you bridge the gap on that, which is great.
Well, I'm an independent thinker, JP. I've thought over these issues with a lot of time and effort, and I'm striving not for the partisan choice. I think it was JFK who said, we're not looking for the Democrat answer or the Republican answer. We're looking for the right answer. So I'm not afraid to go against my party when I think they're wrong.
Great. And you know what? The score shows that, because very, very few people get both thumbs up. As I said, that's a rarity. That's almost like a unicorn, to be honest. So good job on that. Okay, great. Let's see what Ms. Pettersen has to say. What's her position on healthcare? I wonder what it is. Suzanne?
Well, she is a strong supporter of partisan politics when it comes to the healthcare issue. She has voted with Democrats for expansions of Medicare and Medicaid, including to illegal immigrants. She voted for many big governmental mandates and expenditures under COVID, and she has also advocated for a Medicare for All style program, specifically for the state of Colorado. I believe they call it the Colorado option, but she has advocated for centralizing even Colorado state healthcare if the federal government cannot centralize it with Medicare for All.
Okay. So again, she's on the position of an extreme position on that. She actually, the score, I'd pull it up, but I can just explain it. It's she's got some a half thumbs up for having some government support, where some on the far right don't want any government support at all for outside of the traditional Medicare. But she loses it big on this Medicare for All, which would eliminate private healthcare. Ultimately eliminate private healthcare.
And she is willing to do that at the state level if the federal government isn't.
10% of the public supports her on that, just like 8% of the public supports her on the extreme abortion up to birth. These people on her side, the extreme progressives, are living on a very small fringe of 10% of people telling the other 90% how to live. And that, to me, is, if that's not tyranny, I don't know what is. Honestly, I don't know what is.
And they would like to pass more if they could.
Okay, great. So, all right. You know what? If she was here, she could defend herself, but she's too afraid to show up. So this is what you get when you don't show up. We're just going by the facts. Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, so great. So we're going to move on to the next point. The fourth in the 5-point star is educational opportunity. So Erik, again, another 2-point question. Sorry about that. Do you support school choice, school vouchers, and more parental involvement in schools? And that's directly related to part 2 of the question. Do you oppose teaching critical race theory and radical transgender education to our children?
So yes, I support school choice. I think parents ultimately are responsible for their children's education, need to be involved in the school system, need to know what's being taught there. I think one of the positive outcomes of the COVID crisis was that parents became much more aware of the curriculum that was going on and what was being taught to their children, and started to become re-involved with the process. They identified things that are problematic, that should not be in our school system, like critical race theory, like the sexualization of our children. Our schools are falling way behind the rest of the world because they're focused on teaching ideologies and not critical thinking skills. So I want our children to have phenomenal opportunities. I want us to be leading the world in our education system, and we need to be focused on teaching children how to think critically, developing wisdom, not teaching them what to think by espousing certain ideologies. In fact, many ideologies that are anti-American and actually teach kids to hate this country in a way that is not healthy, and also foment divisiveness in our schools that is deeply unhealthy. We need to get back to teaching critical thinking skills.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again for your response on that. And that's why you get thumbs up on both those answers, because that's where the American people stand on these issues. Whereas the extremes are in different areas. The far left is pushing these ideologies. And this is decades in the works. If any of your viewers know about Rules for Radicals and books from the 60s, 70s, this is a slow march that's been going on to do this. So I'm glad, and you're glad, most Americans are glad parents are waking up and starting to interject, and instead of leaving on autopilot thinking everything's cool when things like this are happening in the school. So thank you for that. You're with the American people once again, so you get the thumbs up and the positive score on that. Okay, let's go to where are we on? Where's Brittany on this?
Well, Brittany is not a supporter of parents' rights, and she does support big government agendas in schools. She has voted for identity politics to be allowed in schools. Obviously, she has voted to increase sexual education in schools and specifically prohibit any teaching that might emphasize, not just focus on, but might emphasize abstinence. She does not want you teaching teenagers to wait. She has voted for kids as young as 12 years old to be able to seek therapy without parental consent. And we know this is a precursor to transition therapy, though she has voted against transition therapy directly. She has voted for children as young as 12 to be able to seek professional therapy without parental knowledge or consent. And she basically is a big supporter for somebody who advocates being a mom. She seems to want the government in charge of your kids as much as possible.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And Suzanne, again, this is all based on the facts. And again, American people do not want their kids at 12 years old choosing what gender they want to be. It's just not a populist thing. It's a extreme fringe element. And
parents certainly want control and knowledge of what their children are going through so that they can provide appropriate care.
And in Europe, that's been a few years ahead of us, and all this stuff is now not. They're banning all of these child transgender things. They're realizing the damage it's doing. So people have to wake up in America, that people that aren't on board yet, and see. But again, the majority of people are on Erik's side on this. Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, great. So next question. We're moving now to national opportunity. There's the next question on this is question number 7. Do you support our local police, safe communities, and law and order, and oppose the defund the police efforts?
Absolutely. I support our law enforcement, and I'm absolutely against this defund the police movement. It's undermined law enforcement. We've got a crime wave here in Colorado, JP. We're leading the nation in auto theft. We're number 2 in the nation for fentanyl overdose deaths. We're number 1 in the nation for bank robberies. Denver's the cocaine capital of the country. There is a crime wave, and it's a direct result of soft on crime policies coming out of our Democrat-led legislature, including my opponent, who's championed a bill to decriminalize fentanyl, reduce the penalties from a felony to a misdemeanor for possessing a lethal dose of fentanyl and distributing fentanyl. She also worked to reduce the penalties for auto theft. There's a reason we're leading the nation in auto theft. So we've got to restore the integrity of our law enforcement. Congress needs to play a role as a voice for upholding the rule of law. We need to take a close look at the Department of Justice and make sure they're doing the right thing. But we've got to reverse the damage that the left has done through trying to defund the police, how they've undermined the integrity of our law enforcement officers, who 99% of them just want to protect and serve. They're not doing it to get wealthy. They're doing it because they love their communities and they want to protect people. And so I'm going to be a strong voice for the rule of law and holding criminals accountable, not putting criminals before our good citizens.
Thank you for your positions on that. And, you win on that once again. You're with the American people. And the facts, I'm sure you've seen the facts speak for themselves. Everywhere they were defunding police, crime has skyrocketed. The data proves it. And they're protecting criminals and putting innocent people's lives at risk, and sometimes at mortal risk. And so, I don't understand why Democrats are all for 100,000 Americans dead, being killed every year by fentanyl or drugs, most of it fentanyl from the southern border, because they don't want to even criminal. They want to keep that a lower level of crime. I just don't understand how anybody could, with a straight face, say they care about you, but they'll let you be murdered in the streets and let your kid die of fentanyl poisoning because they don't want to do anything about it. I just find it bizarre they can stand with a straight.
They must live in a gated community and have their own private security, because it's only coming from the elites who aren't touched by the criminality and the unsafeness that is nationwide at this point, especially in our bigger cities. And Democrat-led cities are leading the way in this crime wave.
Yeah, it's bad everywhere. So thank you for taking a stand on that. And let's see what Ms. Pettersen has to say about this.
And on the issue of police and law enforcement, she actually sponsored the first law in the nation that ended qualified immunity for police officers there in the state of Colorado, and is pretty proud of that. She has voted to reduce the maximum sentence for murder, to remove life without parole as an option. Murderers under this bill could receive as little as 16 years. So she has certainly been soft on murder. As Erik mentioned, she has voted to increase the amount of fentanyl that is considered a misdemeanor. She has also voted to give voting rights to paroled felons who have not paid for their fines and restitution, and other bills that specifically limit police and law enforcement capacity and provide additional rights for criminals.
Okay, so it sounds to me that if your goal is to just rip apart and make society worse and just tear apart our country on purpose, I'm not sure if you do anything different. I mean, honestly, again, this is not a biased thing. This is what the people want, the Constitution. This is not about Republican versus Democrat, but she's right now on that side with the progressive Democrats that are consistently voting to drug your kids to death, to open the borders, to let crime run rampant, to give murderers another shot out. You have Fetterman in Pennsylvania letting out murderers. People that kill people are right out of jail. I mean, I don't know. The viewers can make a decision, but it seems to me that only some
the legislation that she seems
doing this.
Yes, and the legislation she seems to pick, as often many Democrats will do, it sounds good. They name them really good things, but when you look into the bill, what actually happens is the destruction of the rights of the American people.
That's right. Again, this is about the American people disagree with her on this, and that's why she loses the point, and Erik gains it once again. Okay, Erik, great. We have three more. We're number 8. Do you support border security, lawful immigration, and stemming border crime and drugs? I can guess your answer to this from your last question we had.
Well, absolutely. And this is the number one charge of the federal government, to protect the American people, to make sure that our national security is solid. And we have a humanitarian crisis and a national security disaster on the southern border because of the Biden administration's open border policies. We have record human trafficking, illicit drug trafficking. Cartels are building an empire along the southern border. It's lawlessness at its finest, and it's affecting Colorado. Colorado's become a border state because of these policies. We have the I-25 corridor that cartels are exploiting, and there's a reason that we're number 1 in the nation for cocaine distribution, number 2 in the nation for fentanyl overdoses. Chinese fentanyl is streaming across that southern border, but also bad actors and terrorist elements are exploiting our southern border. There's a constant threat to the security of this nation, and the federal government must secure the border. We need to finish the wall. It's an effective deterrent. But I believe in compassionate and sound immigration policy reform to make sure that people understand the immigration laws, that we continue to have immigrants immigrate to our country. My grandparents immigrated here from Norway. We also need to have laws that support the use of migrant labor. My district's dependent upon it. I have a large tract of agricultural industry in my district that needs migrant workforces to sustain itself. But right now it's totally out of balance, and it's jeopardizing the security of this country, and it's contributing to the significant crime in this country. And I hope that Suzanne will point out my opponent's letter to the Biden administration asking that Biden defund the border control agencies and ICE and have massive amnesty for immigrants. This is another point where she puts illegal immigration and even criminals above American citizens, and it's unacceptable.
Yes. I mean, again, this is a threat to our national security, and as you said, this isn't just the will of the people. We have those two measuring sticks, will of the people and the Constitution. The Constitution makes it clear what the federal government, especially the federal government's role is protecting the people on our borders. And they're just completely ignoring all of it. Not one country in the world is doing what America is doing.
Nobody does this. No, because
nobody does this except maybe one party that thinks they can get political advantage from immigrants that come in illegally and then vote for them. There's nothing else we could see that would be their motivation. And again, I saw a poll recently that the majority of Americans believe that the radical Democrats are more concerned about criminals and illegals than they are about Americans. And
well, I think so. I think so, and it is jeopardizing our national security, and it's deeply concerning. It's putting a significant drain on our country, but it's also not compassionate. It's harming more people. And it's just not a compassionate policy, even though they try to veil it as such.
I agree. I mean, for sure. Again, this is me speaking for the 80% of Americans, not always John Paul Moran speaking, but John Paul and the 80% agree on that 100%, to be honest. And so, and here's your score on and the explanation on your OppScore, just for your viewers to see. Again, you've got the thumbs up on that. So thank you. Okay, so we're going to move now to Pettersen's position on this. This is going to be get the popcorn time. Let's see what she has to say about this. Erik already told us a couple things.
Well, yes, as Erik mentioned, she did participate in writing a letter to Joe Biden asking for the defunding of ICE. Much was the position of Black Lives Matter at that time. As we know, her husband is a huge proponent of that. So there may be some crossover there where she is, that cross messaging seems to be slipping into her politics, but she is also voted to give illegal immigrants government-funded health care, including abortion. So she layers those progressive issues there. And a bill that would give 200,000 illegal immigrants in Colorado access to public benefits. So again, giving taxpayer money, not just to protecting illegals, but ensuring that taxpayer dollars do go to illegals. She voted to prevent law officers from enforcing federal immigration laws. She co-sponsored in a bill giving state tuition to illegals who are there in the state illegally, and a bill that would fine landlords $2,000 apiece just to ask the immigration status of a potential tenant.
And again, these are very, very, very radical positions. She gets the thumbs down on this, and there's lots of data that you can find in her score explaining her radical positions and where the people stand, and proving that she's far, far from where the American people stand.
Yeah, she supports open borders, and she supports funding and government-sponsored benefits for illegals in any way possible.
Yes. Yep. And so again, having compassion and having something, a compassionate way forward for people here, that especially people that have been here for a long time for various reasons, that's one conversation. But it's a different conversation to talk about these radical defunding ICE, defunding the border, just having taxpayers so you can just pay for people that shouldn't be.
And the economic waste that the vast majority of Americans do not feel that we should be funding free education, free benefits, free
No,
free
great.
healthcare for people who have entered the country illegally, and yet she has voted to support that many, many times.
That's not a populist position once again. So, okay, she gets the thumbs down. Okay, great. So the next two more questions and we're done. Okay, so number 9, two very important questions, both on Rasmussen's top 10 list of the most important issues that Americans are facing. Okay, do you support, adhere to, and publicly promote transparent, secure, free, and fair elections and voter ID laws? Erik.
Absolutely. I mean, transparent, free, and fair elections are fundamental to our constitutional republic, JP. And this should not be a partisan issue. Everyone should make sure and want to make sure that in our elections, it's impossible to cheat and very accessible for all Americans. And so both parties have called into question the integrity of our elections. Hillary Clinton, Stacey Abrams, and hundreds of Democrat legislators back in 2016. That narrative continued. And so we've got to come together to make sure that Americans have the utmost trust in our election systems, and millions of them don't. And that's deeply concerning to me. And it's just a bedrock of our constitutional processes to ensure that every vote counts and that there's no opportunities to tip the scales in our election process.
Okay, thank you for your response on that. And I would say that, again, that Americans do want, I mean, I don't like mail-in voting. I know how bad it is, but most Americans like the convenience of it. So that's one thing that I personally disagree with the scoring system when it comes to making it easy to vote. But the vast majority of people do want it to make it impossible to cheat, and that's most important. Is voter ID, not having these drop boxes where people can put whatever votes in. They're not trackable. I mean, people don't want cheaters in the election system. And by the way, you probably know this, but these Democrats you mentioned, and many of them have questioned every single Republican that was elected this century. Every election was questioned by the left. So it's very disingenuous for them to call people, election deniers, because you question anything about 2020, but yet they questioned 2000, then they questioned 2004,
Right.
then they questioned 2016. They seem to have no limit to how many times they can question elections. It's only if their side, who depends on who wins or loses, whether you're an election denier or not.
Well, and it's a very complex process.
Yes.
And we should be able to ask questions about it and express concerns without this tag of election denier. I mean, the media is controlling the narrative in a way that is grossly unhealthy and prevents us from actually taking a nonpartisan look at the election process to make sure it's secure. This should be the concern of every American and every elected official to make sure we do it right.
Agreed. Because the minute their side loses, they're gonna say, election, it's gonna flip. So the more secure it is, the better for everybody. Just make it so you can't cheat and no one can complain. I don't know why. So common sense. Again, we're dealing with Washington. So okay, thank you. All right, so let's see what is Brittany Pettersen cooking up for this? I wonder what her position is on this. I could guess from everything she said so far, but let's see.
Well, her record on election integrity seems to be specifically focused on how a bill would benefit the Democrat Party. She's extremely partisan in the way she supports election issues. She actually voted to require less ID by voting for an automatic voter registration bill. This bill passed in Colorado. It added 200 in the 2020 election alone. It added 250,000 voters to the voting rolls by automatic registration. And John, curiously, 1/2 of those voters voted. So that's very high voting numbers for a voting block that was otherwise decided not to register themselves. They were automatically registered, and then they're voting at 50%, which is, as we know, a very high turnout rate. So it's very interesting that her measures have benefited Democrats specifically. Additionally, she adjusted voter laws in her party's favor by including to lower the voting age during primaries to 17. As we know, constitutionally, you cannot vote in a presidential election unless you are 18. The Constitution, the amendments are very clear on that, but they have worked, again, this little way around to lower the voting rate in the primary race to 17. So it seems that she opposes both the Constitution and the will of the people on this issue, but she is willing to change voting laws if it will help her party.
Exactly. So here's her data on that. Again, working against the people, working against the Constitution. It's all about power and control. And when you look how common sense the conversation we're having here is, and we have numbers about 80% on average of Americans support these common sense principles. It is clear why they need to pull every trick out of the book and why they need to do all this stuff and illegals and 17-year-olds and everything, because their wells dried up. They don't have common sense. They're against common sense.
Well, and John, we mentioned earlier
do all this stuff.
We mentioned earlier in her efforts on police reform that she had voted to expand voting rights to parolees who had not paid their fines yet. That also is a big Democrat voting group. They're trying to scoop up
it's all about staying in power.
Criminals, and that's why they support a lot of criminals in their legislation, because they are trying to use those as a voting block, and she has done that as well. So her response to voting is anything that helps a Democrat.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And people that are watching this, be aware of it. We're just putting the facts out. You decide. We're not saying who to vote for, but you have the information now that you would never hear from the lips of Ms. Pettersen. She would never explain it the way we're explaining it. So, this is just not cool what they're trying to do to get in, stay in power at all costs. The voters will decide, but hopefully they're okay. So let's go to the next one. We're down to our 10th question, and we're wrapping up. So 10th question, big question is gas prices, energy prices. We might be running out of diesel in 20 days. I mean, there's craziness happening with the energy sector, self-induced pain at the pump. So big question for you, Erik. Last question. Do you support sensible, science-based renewable energy solutions while maintaining a mix of fossil fuels to regain American energy independence?
Absolutely. I think you stated my position very well, JP. I spent a decade in the energy sector all over the world. I've drilled oil and natural gas wells here in Colorado. That industry has been harmed directly by my opponent. We've lost $10 to $20 billion every year because of a bill called Senate Bill 181, which my opponent championed in the legislature. We need balanced energy. We need to be utilizing oil and natural gas as we work towards more sustainable sources of energy. One of those we should be strongly considering is nuclear energy. It's improved in its safety. Its technology is far more efficient, much smaller footprint, much more affordable, and it's zero emissions technology. One of the things about District 7 here in Colorado is that I have the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in my district. I want to make sure they're well funded so we can be exploring out more sustainable sources of energy. But I don't think government should be tipping the scale through an ideological bias. I believe that we should allow free market forces and economic viability to help determine the energy we utilize. But there does need to be a transition. We need to be good stewards of our environment. Colorado's a beautiful state, and I do think we're having an impact on our climate and the environment. So we need to make sure that we're protecting the environment in balance with creating economic opportunity. The other thing is that energy policy is a hedge against inflation, and it's fundamental to our national security. And the Biden administration is doing everything it can possibly do to undermine our national security by draining the strategic petroleum reserves to unprecedented lows, over 40-year lows, which hurts our ability to respond to crisis and potential conflict. And we have, by the way, we have the Ukrainian-Russian crisis going on that could expand, and we're jeopardizing our ability to handle crises because we've drained the strategic petroleum reserves. The other thing most people don't understand is that Biden is compromising the integrity of those salt mine reservoirs and endangering our ability to ever refill those again because it's compromised those reservoirs. So we need those who understand energy policy in office. I'm one of those, and we need a balanced approach. And the Biden administration and radical progressives have no clue what they're doing to this country. It's harming Americans at the pump, making everything more costly, but it's undermining the security of our country.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And you said it very well. You have a background in energy. And, I've heard statistics like 87% of the Biden administration never worked in the private sector, never owned a business or anything, never ran a candy store. And I think there's like 5 or 6 engineers in all of Congress. So we have a bunch of people that don't know that you're an exception, but most people don't know what they're talking about. And they're making policy and really, really damaging and people might actually freeze to death because of the cold this winter. In England, they say 10,000 people they expect to freeze to death because of they're
It's
just
scary.
not, because they're you're not going to, it's going to be probably decades before we start really getting off oil and gas dependency, and they're rushing it because of political reasons. And
Well, they've destroyed our domestic production, making us dependent on countries that are openly hostile to us.
Right.
We should never be in that position. We produce oil and natural gas more cleanly than anywhere else in the world. And we're emboldening China as we get more dependent on their rare earth metals. They're building a coal-powered plant once a week, and we're exporting coal to China. Well,
crazy.
You want
and these, nothing to say, but these dummies, they're all like rah rah and energy and American oil. We still need to use oil. 90% plus of our energy comes from petroleum. It's not going to end in decades. For them to think so is just destroying America. Again, to me, it seems like what someone would do if they wanted to destroy America. They'd be doing exactly what they're doing.
And that's reckless and poly. Yeah, it is grossly naive.
Grossly naive, and we do not want to be partisan here, but the facts are the facts. She's working against the people. So let's see what she has to say on this. And what does Brittany Pettersen have to say about oil and gas? Final question.
Well, Brittany seems to be opposed to not only oil and gas as it is an energy source for Americans, but also as a source of jobs and income. As Erik mentioned, she voted in 2019 for a massive increase in oil and gas regulation, which has greatly suppressed oil and gas production in Colorado, which is a major industry there. She also sponsored legislation again in 2020 to add regulations to the gas and oil industry. She, with the Democrats, passed a transportation bill in Colorado that allowed for gas tax increases without any new votes. So they can continue to increase gas and actually have a regularly scheduled gas tax increase. It seems to be in perpetuity. I'd have to relook at that legislation. Well, but every year, an additional increase on the residents of Colorado, which includes 2022 tax increases that are affecting gas prices right now. Some of these really high prices that they're seeing in Colorado are the taxes that Pettersen herself voted for.
Okay, so she's an extremist on this too. So thank you very much for that information that the voters of Colorado, the 7th District, need to know before they vote. So thank you. There it is. Again, she is an extremist on almost every issue. And I'll pull up briefly what the side-by-side is. You're 4.6 and she's negative 1.6. Huge gap. If you're anywhere south of 2, you should not be in office. If you're south of 0, you're working against the people on most issues and the Constitution. You really need to go. So before she gets there, how about people get smart and say, do you want to vote for somebody, Erik, like you, or vote for that's working for the people provably, or vote for somebody like Brittany Pettersen, who's working provably against America, the voters of Colorado, and almost everything we went down by line with the data. This data speaks for itself, right?
Absolutely.
That's our position on Go USA. We want to see people vote for opportunity and not for people that are running that are more interested in tyranny and pushing their principles and ideas down your throat. Any last statements before we go from this? This was a fun debate. I learned a lot. I hope the voters have learned a lot, and will learn a lot before anybody that didn't vote yet. Please take this into consideration.
Well, it's phenomenal to talk to you, JP and Suzanne, and to see this tool that you've put together. I mean, it's comprehensive and it's based on common sense principles. And that's what I stand for, is common sense and serving the American people, serving the constituents of Colorado's 7th Congressional District. I'm not a career politician like my opponent. I never aspired to do this. I'm an Army combat veteran. Then I spent a decade in the energy sector. And then I was working to become a counselor to work with veterans and trauma victims. For me, this is a call of duty and active service. And I'm going to serve all of District 7. I'm open-minded. I'm an independent thinker. But it's all about applying wisdom and coming up with common sense solutions and ultimately upholding the rule of law, protecting the U.S. Constitution. These fundamentals made this country great. And my opponent and others on the far left are trying to undermine those principles and go against common sense in a way that is so staggering. The American people need to wake up. They need to look into but beneath the surface of good marketing, because that's all the Democrats have at this point.
That's right. That's right. You might like to hear the fact we were actually going to call it the common sense score at one point, but hard to trademark that. The trademark office doesn't like something that's generic. And plus, it's just not unique, but we call it the opportunity score. But the idea is opportunity. Who is not for more opportunity? It's like the most common sense thing is more opportunity, not less, right? For a better life. So we agree with you. Thank you again for your service, by the way. Thank you for your service to our armed forces and for keeping us safe. And thank you for hopefully your service as the next representative of the 7th District of Colorado, because we're for opportunity and you knock it out of the park with your score versus your opponent by a long shot.
Thank you, JP.
Okay, thank you once again. Good luck. Thank you for running, and good luck in 7 days. So we're going to wrap up right now and thank our viewers for joining us today. Thank you for joining the Opportunity Debate, the Opportunity Score, or the OppScore Debate, with or without the candidates for the race for the 7th Congressional District in Colorado. We thank Republican nominee Erik Aadland for joining us, and the Aadland for Congress campaign, Suzanne Monk, and special thanks to our core of hardworking pro-America volunteers and our generous donors at GOUSA, where we unabashedly stand for American values and the voice of the forgotten 80%. That little number, 80%. We have produced other debates like this for other candidates all over the country. So be sure to check them out on our YouTube and Rumble channels and support politicians who support your values and interests as detailed in their OppScore ratings. Find us at go-usa.us or just Google GoUSA to learn more, to donate, and search over 500 other candidates we've scored. And be sure to vote for this election and vote smart. And remember, again, as we like to say, it's not left versus right or red versus blue. It's really them versus you. Thanks for watching, everybody.